Oh, I actually had something cool that I was going to tell y'all, but I can't say it. Yeah, because listeners, when we start the recording, this might surprise you to know, but we don't hit record, then start a call, and then immediately start doing a podcast. We do.
This isn't Boston's favorite son.
No. We do a little bit of a natter, and we have news and stuff.
Yeah, we chat about our little secret shit we got going on, all our fun little things.
I literally just remembered that I have something awesome involving wrestling that I can't yet talk about.
You were going to start the show by telling all of your secrets onto the recorded microphone, because we were just in chat about all our secrets mode.
And the thing is, talking about a huge match announcement that I hopefully will be able to have in the next few weeks that is genuinely fucking awesome would be a way better way to start this week's episode than the one idea I had, and to call it an idea is to insult the very concept of concepts, which is the risk involved in pulling your ass cheeks apart to get a better sounding fart without the resonance of the cheeks there, because it's always a coin flip.
Oh yeah, no, you're right. Do you have enough pressure to really squeak out something audible just on the basis of your anus alone, right? Because if you pull that cheek open, that's all you're going to get. You're not going to get any flap. You're not going to get any ripple. You run the risk of just a hiss.
I entirely spec'd into having the cheeks do the work. I've put 3 decades of my life into working on that skill. I don't even know where I would start if I wasn't relying on the cheeks to be there as part of the equation.
I mean, I think that's smart. You're working smarter, not harder. And no one is going to criticize you for that. Because there is an inherent risk reward. I mean, I always tell people about when Sting invited me over to his house, saying he had something great to show me. And he'd just gotten back from a Cradle of Filth concert, and he said he was going to get me a lock of Danny Filth's hair. So I think, brilliant, I've got a new wank rag. So I go over there, and I let myself in. We've got that kind of relationship. And then he stood there in the middle of his flat, buck naked, stood up, pulling his cheeks apart. I could see right into the Prime Directive. And then, after all this build-up, he's like, wait for it. And then I just get... What is that?
Yeah.
Now...
all that build-up.
With Sting, you never... He's a dickhead. With Sting, you never know. It could be that he was... this is one of those ones that's going to come out with enough gusto that I don't need the cheeks. The cheeks are only going to be an impediment. Or I'm going to call her halfway across town to come here to do a deliberately bad, to do the classic exasperated sigh. The all-time classic disappointing fart.
And when it comes to Sting, you just never know if they are merely edging you or they're struggling, right?
I mean, that is well known about him. He's a tantric guster.
Well, welcome to Podquisition. We're here. We got video games.
I started wrestling training again, by the way.
Yay!
Contractually, I've got another at least 3 minutes before I have to cede the floor to the subject matter that we're here for. My neck fucking hurts. I've been out the ring for... I think the last match I had was January. And then I've been away and was pretty much ready to retire. But just when you think you're out, you get bored. But yeah, a couple things are potentially happening, and there is one big thing to either keep me going or serve as a last match thing. I haven't decided yet, but yeah, back in the ring for the first time in months, last Thursday, and it is funny what gets you when you return, because I still got all my strength, which is good. I still know the moves pretty much. Little bit, out of practice on them, but it's just a case of getting the positioning there. Still bump like a pro. It's the dizziness. You forget how unusual what you're doing is when you don't do it for a while. Even just the act of running backwards and forwards across the ring, like running the ropes, as they say, where you run towards the ropes, then you turn, so your back's to the ropes, hook it with your right hand, then bounce off a bit, let go, back and forth. Just that had me wanting to pass out. Not from the breathing, but because of just being woozy and lightheaded from just turning over and over. To say nothing of like throwing yourself like literally like 360 degrees around. Yeah, my neck's been caning. That's another, you forget how like strong your neck gets, because when you bump, you have to keep your head and your chin tucked and all of that. So I've been walking around for the past few months with a soft neck. That's a sobering thought. Also, the main protagonist from Expedition 33 looks exactly like my wrestling trainer Liam Slater, and it's been fucking weird.
Now you say that, that's pretty funny.
Yeah, you know, you've met Liam.
Yeah,
he looks just like him, didn't
he? It is uncanny.
Like, you can wear different hairstyles and things in the game.
Yeah.
And so sometimes he looks more Liam-ish than others. But there's a couple of hairstyles that's similar in sort of length, if not exactly style. But certainly you get the kind of general length and that. And I'm like, that's Liam. Other times he looks exactly like Daniel Radcliffe, though. So it's, 6 of one, half dozen of the other. It's the classic two-tone comparison that every ostensibly masculine portrayal has. It's either Daniel Radcliffe or Liam Slater.
Well, is this? Yeah. This seems like a good time to just segue into talking about that game.
That game.
I love this weird French video game.
It's amazing. I'll let you give the sort of basic rundown. I'll just very quickly say that I did a video on it on Monday about me being really fucking bad at it, possibly to the point of not being able to play it. I did what I said in the video. I busted it down to easy and battled a lot on easy to like just try and get more to grips with it. I am now on normal again. I'm getting through it. I'm not great. But yeah, I've had a lot of issues with the dodging, parrying. The timing is so tight, and even though I'm fine at dodging in other games, this one it throws me for a loop. But I am thrilled that I am making so much more progress with it, because yes, it's fucking something special, that game.
I'm glad to hear you're coming around on it in that regard. Like, before we dig into it too much, I'll very quickly on that point say I have had, I think, a better experience with it by playing the early hours in easy mode deliberately before going to normal, in as much as, because the parry and dodge system doesn't have any visual indicators to tell you how close you were to successful timing, whether you were early or late, for example, playing with that slightly wider window of acceptable inputs gets you a better feel for what this game is after, in a way that does really help when you move to that sort of tighter, more unforgiving response window.
I think that's absolutely the case. Because, even though I didn't start on easy, after spending a bit of time on easy and then going back to normal, again, I'm not great. There are still some enemies whose timings are fucking bananas, but I was having a much, significantly easier time after spending some time with the training wheels.
So we should probably explain what this is for anyone who's not been playing it. Clair Obscur Expedition 33 is a turn-based RPG that is tonally whiplashing in how French it is, and we'll get to that in a minute. But it's the core concept is fucking fascinating.
Oh,
I
yeah.
love the world building idea to this. So you live in this world where for, I think it's 67 years now, there has been this mountain that this figure called the Paintress, once a year, paints a number on the side of a mountain. And it started at 100, and every year it's getting one lower. And anyone who's above that age just dies. You know, she paints the new number on the mountain, and instantly anyone that age or above just fucking turns into dust and becomes one with the universe. And initially, not such a problem, you know. People who are 100 years old, there's not that many of them, and they were probably going to die anyway. But this has been going on for long enough that the number on the mountain is now 33. And, like, the initial world building is around, like, the knowledge that this number is getting so low that, like, it's really within a generation or so going to be at the point where, like, there's no one left old enough to be having more children, and like that's going to sort of doubly speed up the process of like humanity dying out. So you've for many years now had these expeditions going out of people basically going to try and head to that mountain and do something to stop this number going down. And as time's gone on, fewer and fewer people have gone on these expeditions, because, like, at the point we're at now when the game starts, with Expedition 33, 33 is the oldest 32 is the oldest a person can be and be alive at this point. If that's you, being 32 makes you, like, probably one of the better equipped people to, like, go on an expedition of that kind of nature to have the experience needed. But, like, do you want to spend the last year, like, guaranteed the last year you're going to be alive, going on what's probably a suicide quest, because no one's ever fucking come back from trying to stop these numbers going down? And all, like, the world building around this core concept, fascinating. But you play as this small little group of people who are this year's crop going off to try and stop the numbers going down. And I fucking love the writing in this game. Like, before we get to anything mechanically in it, I love that the adults in this game talk like adults.
The naturalistic dialogue is something else.
They really well strike a balance between these are people who have had to grow up faster than their years would suggest, where, like, at 32, you are the oldest person most people alive will have ever seen, and having to, like, take on that role of an elder while still being very young.
It feels like working in the games journalism business, honestly.
Yeah. But yeah, as you said, naturalistic is a really good way to put it. Like, I don't know another game where the dialogue feels so not video game dialogue.
I know one, and it makes me think of it. And it's not even the game's dialogue, it's one voice actor. And this is something I've seen not many games attempt, and I understand why they don't attempt it, but it is one of the all-time difference makers. What this game does that works so well is not just the writing, but also the voice acting. And they have people talking over each other. They have people starting a sentence and tripping over it a bit, and then, like, people saying the same thing, or what, like, that kind of thing. And I've not seen it done this convincingly since Lost fucking Odyssey. Since, I think the guy's name was Jansen, I think, the mage. Who put in such a great, not a universally great voice cast in that game, but Jansen's voice actor was fucking sublime, and a big part of it was he would talk over people or in the back, like talk at the same time. And there's quite a bit of that in this, as well as stuff that you just don't see scripted for voice actors. There's a moment where one of the protagonists, Gustav, like one of the expeditioners, is apologizing to another character because he had to say something that was very rude. And then gets really embarrassed. And the way he is stumbling over his apology is not how it's written for voice actors. It's how you'd see a live-action actor doing it. Just the constant repetition and awkwardness of sorry with the stuttering. It's just so natural. And I cannot think the last time I had dialogue and a performance of it that came across so natural in a voice acting sense.
And I think that, in combination with some of the very bold and confident narrative swings that game is willing to make early on, have done a really good job of getting me very invested in the cast of characters. They have set the stakes very strongly, very early, with very natural feeling characters, and I'm really, like... The opening, maybe 45 minutes or so, is a little linear, but once you get into Act 1 proper, very quickly I was like, oh, I don't want to put this game down. This is engrossing.
Yeah, the way it opens up, like I've described it as like Logan's Run by way of the labyrinth. It's because it's, on the one hand, you go into it expecting dark, maudlin, morbid, and you get plenty of that. And then you're in a village full of what could have been Jim Henson puppets. Like,
yes.
Just coming out with legitimately funny dialogue interact, like legitimately funny lines.
Its tone is kind of like that throughout. One of the first things that really struck me was this game's tonal relationship to its own Frenchness, in that, like, the start of this game is, like, very much leaning into French is, like, this language that if you don't speak it is very much taken as romantic. These wonderful bits of soundtrack with, like, French lyricism happening in the background. And then, not that long after, you encounter a robot mime that you beat up, and if you beat up the robot mime, now you get an outfit called the baguette outfit. That is the stereotype of a French person with a baguette on their back as if it was a sword scabbard.
Yeah, I don't know how it came across to anyone else in the house when, like, I was just playing this game and then suddenly sat bolt upright, lunged my finger at the TV and just went, baguette outfit!
But I mean,
I was delighted.
But, like, that's the thing this game does, is it, like, takes itself very seriously and then lets itself have these little moments of, like, truly very joyous levity. And it doesn't feel nearly as at odds as I would expect it to.
Oh, yeah, no, because it's tempting to say something like, tonally it's everywhere, or it's whiplashy, but it's not. It is all over the place insofar as it's in many different places, but not in a way that feels uncontrolled or thematically inconsistent. It's...
Yeah.
Because everything has just this slight surreal edge to it, that it's not out and out weird. And even when it is fucking weird, it's been grounded by the more naturalistic and really just very believably human stuff. They've struck an incredible balance with it. It's, to say it's all over the place makes it feel unbalanced, but it's more like it is everywhere with balance.
Yeah. It's exactly the right amount of darting over to other places. Stylistically, visually, this game looks stunning. Like, I have to put this in comparison to stuff like the Persona games and Metaphor ReFantasio last year, in terms of, like, the highly stylized UI, big sweeping camera swings in combat, which I think is all the more impressive to do in a game that's going for a somewhat photorealism-y art style, as opposed to the very exaggerated cartoony look that Atlas usually goes for. This is the most impressed I've been by someone outside of Atlas trying to do that very exaggerated stylistic visual presentation.
Yeah. That's one of the fun things I find with this game is I could isolate so many individual elements and be like, that looks exactly like that thing from that game. There's bits of this you could pull from and say, here's where it's like Elden Ring. Here's where it's like Persona. Here's where it's like any number of turn-based RPGs. But when it's all put together, it does create something that does... There's nothing quite... There's other games I've described as this.
For sure.
It's like a lot of games, but there's no game like it. And that is very much how I feel with this. And
Yeah.
it is hard to pull off an RPG that feels as in-your-face exciting with its interactive elements as a Persona. But by
While
them
being
just
this
being
grounded?
yeah. And I do respect that for them to just be like, you know what? We're just going to take exactly what it is about Persona's HUD and interactive menus that makes them exciting, and we're just going to fucking do it. We're just going to have the menu pop out in that sort of semi-radial presentation around the character, and have you have a chain of different buttons to get to the different commands. And it works really well in this. And the first time I saw it, I was like, oh, they're doing the Persona thing. And after spending time with the game, now it's just doing the Expedition 33 thing.
Yeah. So, before we get into the parrying and stuff, because I feel like we're going to have a lot to chat on there. More broadly, the combat system is your tradition. It's one of those JRPGs where regular attacks build up points that can be spent on doing more specialized attacks. But to put it that way kind of does a disservice to how varied each character's combat mechanics end up being. Some of the early ones you're introduced to, you've got Gustav, whose whole thing is certain special moves build up like an overcharge meter, and he's got like one particular attack early on that is your spend all of that charged up resource on one really big hit. You've got a character who, every time they do spells, it creates charges of different elements, and other spells will get bonuses if you have some of a particular element type saved up to spend. You've got a character early on whose whole thing is stance changing, and every time you do a move, it will potentially change you into a different stance with different attack and defense attributes. Meaning that every individual character is working towards very clear but very separate goals, separate from the do regular normal attacks to get resources.
Yeah. And on top of that, if you kit out the skills accordingly, they all support each other. Because if you have, your mage firing off things that are burning enemies, like inflicting the burn status, and then you've got your stances with mail, where it's like, change to this stance if the enemy you're attacking is burning. Then you start seeing how they play off each other.
And I think the game does a great job of making your default abilities with those first three characters naturally point some of those synergies out to you. Like, that character that stance changes doesn't have an ability to generate their own burn right away. What they do have is another party member who's started with a default skill that's really good at generating burn. And, like, it gets you to think about that synergy very early.
And then they give you Ciel. The one...
Yes.
The character who applies the cards, where you stack a system... You basically attach cards that act as a sort of damage multiplier to enemies, and this whole thing of applying stacks of these cards, which is just a number. You've got a stack of 3, stack of 5, etc., up to a stack of 10. And then other attacks that will cash those stacks in to generate extra damage or additional effects. And then you get her and you realise she's a fucking beast. Mm-hmm. You build her right, and that's something about this game, is on the one hand, there are elements, and we will get to it, where it's like, this is fucking challenging and punishing. And then elements of like, yeah, but if you tinker with it enough, you can you could create some fucking damage. And it's really satisfying. And the fact that so far, and I'm only in like Act 2, but so far, every character I've used has had a very different way of engaging with this one battle system, with their own unique complexities that all work great. None of them so far feel like duds. None of them feel... And what this game's done that I find quite impressive is everyone's complex, but it's not complicated. And there is a difference there. Like, there's a lot to dig into, but mechanically, it's not drowning you in mechanics. It's the same set of mechanics that you approach in different ways.
Indeed. So yeah, the thing that makes the combat difficult, and the thing that a lot of people, and I think both of us at points have struggled with this, the thing that's very much unique but pretty challenging about this combat system is the very tight windows they offer for dodging or parrying enemy attacks. And this is really vital to get a grip around, because particularly as you get further into the game, you start hitting these walls of, there are certain enemies who do so much fucking damage in a single hit that it becomes clear this game is like, what we want from you is to not get hit in the first place. And whether that's by dodging or parrying, it is possible to never take damage from enemies if you are theoretically good enough at dodging and parrying. You never have to take damage from enemies. Get good at this system, because we are going to throw enemies at you that might 1 or 2 hit kill you with their basic attacks. Get good at not taking that damage in the first place.
Yeah. And it is... This game's doing something that sets it apart, because I've never been good at parrying in games. It's why Sekiro is completely inaccessible to me. Even though Lies of P did a good job of getting me able to think about parrying more, I cannot do Sekiro. But I don't have a big problem with dodging in games. But I have really struggled with this one. Conversely, I've talked to people who are terrible at parrying or dodging in games and have had no problem with this one. The complete opposite to me. So this game is doing something to stand out. I think part of it is there are a lot of different ways you are supposed to work out based on which enemy's doing it and which attack that enemy's doing. And it's a lot without any consistent universal tell, where some of them you go by audio cues, some of them will distract you with something, some of them you can just watch, like you're doing a regular action game, some of them will visually flash before they... It's so much and so different, and that's where it can get really overwhelming.
Yeah, because the thing about it is, I know logically that the dodge in this game has a considerably more forgiving window than the parry. And there are times where I have begrudgingly gone, for this fight, dodging is going to be more manageable for me. But as someone that doesn't generally enjoy parry mechanics, I've wanted to be good at parrying in this game. And the only real mechanical difference it makes to parry rather than dodge, as best I can tell, is you can generate action points by parrying, but you don't by dodging. But there is something about the way this game handles parrying where I want to be really good at it.
I'd love to
I have pushed myself to get competent enough at it.
I'll tell you what,
because it feels really nice.
It's because it looks great. One of the things about this game is just how fucking amazing everything looks and sounds. It's majestic. Even little things like when a battle starts, watching Mael, I'm terrible with the pronunciations, I'm sorry, but the fencer,
Yeah.
Her pre-battle animation is fucking amazing. The way she walks, like one arm behind the back and just this swish with the rapier. And then Luna with the swirling in and hovering a bit first. Like, little touches like that are incredible. And the few times I have managed to parry, they have nailed the perfect audio-visual elements to make it supremely satisfying every single time.
For the parrying, I think part of it, the reason it feels so satisfying to pull off is if you see an enemy doing like they're about to do that chain of like 4 hits back to back, that combo of 4 hits, and you manage to parry, get all 4 of them, and then the game gives you a counter attack and you do really big damage back. There is something about that feeling of, you were gearing up to do huge damage to me, I took no damage, you took huge damage, that feels like successfully using counterspell in D&D. It's that like, ha ha ha, fuck you, your big damage hit you, not me. That's like, even if I suck at parrying in this game, I keep chasing the high of, your big attack chain did nothing to me, it fucked you up, you were the one that took damage from your own attack, fuck you.
Yeah.
It's really rewarding when it happens.
Yeah, the few times I've done it, I can totally agree with you, for sure. And then they have the other ones as well. This is where I've started to be a bit nervous, because they also have the jump counters.
Oh,
where instead
yes.
of dodging or parrying, they'll hit the ground and you make all your characters jump up in the air and then you can hit a trigger to counter. Very satisfying, a lot easier to do than any of the other shit, but it's one more thing to think about. And the cultists that you fight that do the big, long, party-wide sweep attacks and then a big jump attack. I kept getting hit by the jump attack because enough time had passed between that and the last time an enemy was throwing out those kinds of attacks at me that I forgot completely about being able to jump. And now I'm at the point where they've introduced a different kind of parry that seems to be, that's all you can do to deal with this kind of attack, is this new type of parry. And there I'm like, okay, now I'm a bit worried again. After I just started getting confident, I'm worried that they are going to bottleneck me into having to parry shit. We will see. But this game does a lot, and it does it all really well, and it's impressive as fuck. But I am at the point now where I'm starting to worry about, like, content overwhelm. Like, is it going to start throwing too much at me? To where it is all really good, but I can't keep track of it. I'm already dealing with the amount of different... the pictos that you actively and then passively equip, and the weapons and the upgrades and the skills and there's a lot. And one criticism I will level at the game is some of those menus commit to the style, but it's where I could have used more function.
Yes, agreed. But yeah, Clair Obscur, super interesting game.
Yeah.
Very, very, very interesting game.
Also, I must say, I forgot to mention it on Monday. I was going to do it at least as a throwaway, because it's such a little thing, but it was the moment before I learned about the combat. It was the moment I was like, I'm going to love this game. Everyone look at me, about to love this game, before I had to dodge something. But after the very first sort of tutorial fight, you get your post-battle confirmation screen, and then there's the, press X to continue to move off that screen, except it doesn't say press X to continue. It has the picture of the button, and it says, we continue. And it sounds like I'm being sarcastic.
No.
But I was
I get it.
That is such beautiful thematic flavor. It's such a little thing, but just changing
really
continue
nice,
to we continue. I'm like, that is oozing style.
I didn't appreciate it that early, but in Act 1, I very much appreciated what that was doing.
Mm-hmm. It's Those are the things. That's the difference
Yeah.
between a game that is all flash and no pan and a game that is true, substantially stylish.
Yeah.
The little touches, not just all
Yeah.
the big flashy stuff, which it also does fantastically, but even on the small level, they're still just putting little bits of flourish on everything. And that, it makes the game just dripping in flavour, like a big juicy steak.
Mm-hmm.
Also,
What about
Mael's
you,
voice
Carl?
actor had been driving me mad because I knew her from something. I just looked her up. She was the
What'd you know her
Albinuric
from?
Elden Ring.
Ah.
Latenna. I was like, I know that fucking voice.
Well, what about you, Conrad? What have you been playing this week?
I have been playing a game called Nunholy. Nunholy, one word.
Great
or
name.
as I'm calling it, Big Titty Hades.
Uh-huh.
That's what it is.
That is what it appears to be from the Steam images.
It is Big Titty Hades. You are a half-blood vampire nun who has traveled to some sort of convent where a group of nuns are fighting against a growing vampire horde led by a vampire queen. It is a action, hit things, progress to the next room, get an item, hit things, progress. But it does do some things that I think are really interesting in the Hades formula. This game places a pretty big emphasis on inventory. Specifically, they call them artifacts, and you have an inventory system that functions in a similar fashion to Resident Evil's briefcase, where items have a certain shape, and you can adjust and rotate them to fit items in to maximize the amount of benefit that you're getting from items. And that seems to be the core of the experience. There are boons also, and they present you with a bit of a choice at the end of most combat encounters, where you'll get a resource, and it can either be an experience boost or a currency, and you get to choose either by absorbing it or smashing it and getting the resource. And those boons that you get at the levels are very similar to the sort of thing that you would get in Hades, where they are augmenting certain attacks, providing bonus types of damage and things like that. And they are incredibly useful. But the game wants you to not use them. The true ending is to never accept the levels, always take the currency, and complete the game using only min-maxing your inventory system and your 3 attack types. You have a basic attack, a ranged sub-weapon attack with ammunition that refills as you do damage with your main weapon, and then a skill that recharges over time, and an ultimate that you will have the opportunity to acquire during runs. Often I didn't bother. And part of that comes down to, upon realizing that the proper way to play this is to only employ the inventory angle, there's just less incentive to go towards rooms that don't give you money, because everything then becomes about getting the money to manage the inventory most effectively. And I didn't find even that the ultimates were that useful. But it's well-paced. The action feels a bit sluggish, if I'm honest, but that's fine, because if it were any faster, the hitboxes on the enemies and you would feel a little too squishy, I think, and then it would just be more frustrating than you feeling like you're just not moving fast enough. I think the big disappointment for me in this game is that I found it to be just utterly too easy. Back at your hub, you get resources that you can spend to upgrade various stats. There's a the currency that lets you make friends with everybody, which can be used to purchase upgrades back at the home base in between runs, but it's also, of course, the item that's used to get the people who are on the route to like you, which divides them pretty evenly in terms of where you'll want to apply them. And at the home, actually, it almost seems like, well, maybe I'll just wait until the run, because everybody that's on the run, save one person, gives you health. And so if you can just keep your health up, you've really got not much to worry about. I managed to complete the game on its good ending with one of the three characters who has like the physical combat focus, melee focus, in under 10 runs. I hadn't even like cleared the challenge for die 5 times to get currency to spend to upgrade your abilities. I'm playing it with a different character now, and I think that it might be more challenging, but I mean, I truly, accomplished what the game puts forth as the real challenge, using almost exclusively the game's basic 3-hit combo, and just some savvy application of the equipment, which is neat. The artifacts can be combined together to maximize damage to a couple of different damage types, holy and fire, and you'll get crit chance increases. Some rooms will provide you the opportunity to upgrade these items and double their effectiveness. There's something to this that, it just doesn't feel like the difficulty is there to justify all of the stuff that they've put in that could make you feel powerful over time, which is kind of a shame. And I was talking about this with somebody, and their thought was, oh, well, they want you to see the cheesecake, but there's not. It's everywhere. It's not. There's not. You're not missing anything. If you finish the game, you'll get one alternate character shot, and it's not, it's not anything different from the rest of the stuff. So I don't know where their priorities were here, but it's a shame, because I think there really is something there in the equipment system that is interesting and fun to fiddle with. And I even do kind of like the idea of cutting you off from half of the abilities in the game to challenge you to complete it without giving into that. There is thematically, narratively, gameplay-wise, something really interesting in all of that just feels wasted because it wasn't hard enough to stand up to that limitation. Kind of a shame. Not a bad game by any means. It's perfectly serviceable. The music in it is solid. The visuals are fine. There's stuff there that I think is really cool, but it just lacks in the challenge department to really make that feel fulfilling. But it's like that sometimes, and that's Nunholy.
Yeah. Quick update on a game that I've been slowly chipping away at the last few weeks, just because I've been playing it on stream. It's not hugely lengthy, but I'm still playing through 1000X Resist.
I started playing that also, actually.
How far in are you, out of
I
curiosity?
am, I just did the first chapter so far.
Okay. This game continues to really fucking impress me and surprise me with where it's going and what it's doing. And I thought that game was pretty interesting and pretty special early on. The more I've gotten into it, the more I'm like, oh god, this would have been in Game of the Year consideration for me if I played it last year. When I talked about it the other week, I was talking about oh yeah, this seems like an interesting game that is sort of examining the ways that people in minority groups will perhaps sell other people in minority groups down the river in self-preservation through the lens of being a sort of critique on the early year, the first year or so of COVID. I sat down and played some of it the other night, and I can best describe the most recent session of it I played as a real-time examination of the ways that American policing is allowed to lie repeatedly to people in custody in order to try and exact falsified confessions out of them. An examination of what value and worth you can find in protest, even when that protest in and of itself in the moment feels like it didn't achieve the aim it was protesting for, particularly with regards to the importance of the historical record noting that there was resistance to a thing, and discussions of how political violence against leaders without a plan for what to do afterwards is a really short-sighted plan that often leans towards creating power vacuums. All wrapped up in some really clever use of being an interactive medium to reinforce its narrative. God, this game is something really special. And the further I've gotten into it, I keep thinking I have a handle on what it's ultimately going for, and then it keeps snowballing. And I'm really fucking impressed with it. It's I don't want to say too much, but it's at the point where, like, at the end of this year, I might end up in my Game of the Year awards having to give this a game that would have been my Game of the Year material last year if I played it award or something, because, like, damn, I'm really impressed by it.
Yeah, I like the tone. I like the presentation a lot. It's certainly effective, and not... It requires a lot of attention, but it doesn't require a lot of effort, which I'm finding pleasant. Right? You just sort of move along and do it. And, I never really got into walking simulators as a genre, but as I get older, I come to appreciate them conceptually more, right? I don't know if I'm getting lazy or what, but if I'm gonna go in for a story, just give me the story almost now. You know, especially if you're not going to do anything really mechanically interesting in that process. Tell me the story.
I have to play it because someone who was angry at me for something else, but they kept talking about the 1000X Resist. They'd assumed that I'd said that video game music is never worth buying ever. When I talked about how they're like flimsy additions to like digital deluxe versions of games. So they just made up a bunch of things I never said. And I was trying to argue with them on this and being like, well, no, that's not what I said. And then they said, 1000X Resist is more relevant than anything you've done in your chop career. And then I'm like, it sounds good. It sounds really good. Based off of that review. If it's more relevant than me, it's got to be doing something amazing, right?
Anyway,
I'll
say
block
this
that
to you.
cunt.
I'll say this to your point, Conrad, about like the gameplay of it. There are points early on where I was like, would this game have been better if it had tried to be less of a game? And yeah, I don't think it's always, particularly in its early section, benefiting from being interactive. As it's gotten further in, it has really strongly made the case for this kind of had to be at least a little interactive. There are story beats in its second and third act where it's like, I am glad that I have a choice in this.
Yeah. Well, cool.
Even if it means playing a slightly janky, occasionally kind of janky game between the narrative early on. But yeah, I will definitely have finished it by the time we record next week, and right now I would be surprised if it fumbled its landing at this point, because it has impressed me throughout. Steph, you played a thing this week that I have also played. Do you have thoughts on the Days Gone remaster?
I've always got thoughts about Days Gone. I have always got thoughts about Days Gone. Days Gone. I love trying to express my opinion on it because nothing I can say makes it sound like I like it. And I sort of don't, but I sort of do. I find it endearingly contemptuous, is one way I could describe it. I'm writing a review of Days Gone Remastered right now. In trying to praise it, I've written one of the most vicious-sounding things I've ever written. I'm just going to try and find that. Endearing, if not outright adorable. Oh, that was about the fact that it's a sort of timestamp from an era where games were co-opting political posturing and imagery and statements while trying to totally be apolitical, everybody. Come on. Mm-hmm. I call it the set menu of 2010's game design. I can't find the exact quote, but basically I said I'm playing, Clair, Obscur Expedition 33 at the same time as this. And Days Gone pairs surprisingly well with it as a digital antacid. Which is pretty much what it is. It is the milk after the chili pepper, is what it is. It is so tepid and so just sort of there that it is, in fact, perfect at what it does. It is sublimely adequate. Precisely sufficient. It's dependable. It asks so little of you, and it provides in return and in abundance. It is Days Gone.
Yeah, I played Days Gone when it first came out, and I remember my response being very much easily boiled down to, look, I know this game is different. Mechanically, narratively, I know it's different. I know that logically. But I just played The Last of Us, why do I need to play this? And like that, I couldn't shake off this feeling of like, I have just played a cinematic heavy zombie survival gruff man travels across America-y game. Nothing in the early hours of it when I first played it really sold me on this has an identity of its own that makes me want another of that genre this quickly.
Yeah. It doesn't have an identity of its own. It's like, you're bang on there. It's hard not to compare it to The Last of Us, but for a number of reasons. It goes for the exact same tone. The story may be different, it's going for the exact same tone. Obviously, you've got Sony publishing both of them. But ultimately, it's not all that different from your average Ubisoft bland box. It gives you, like I call it, the set menu of 2010's AAA game design. You've got your bandit camps, you've got your soft stealth elements with your basic third-person shooting, you've got your rudimentary crafting system, you've got your story that makes the very occasional toothless political allusion that is instantly equivocated out of having anything meaningful to say. It is such a nothing game.
Because I tried to give it more benefit of the doubt coming back to this remaster, and like, my attempt to give it a better shot ran dry so quickly. Like, I can tell you where it was, and again, it doesn't feel fair to compare it to The Last of Us as frequently as I do, but I couldn't help myself that I was like watching that opening cutscene where it's like, the world's gone to shit, and the zombie, whatever we're calling it, outbreak has begun. Oh, the freakers. And, I need to get my beloved female character to safety, but there is a militarized figure who I would sort of beg for help. Please help my female character get help. But he's resistant to help. So violence is going to get involved, and that's not what we want to happen. I just want you to help them. And I'm feeling like it's like, emotionally, beat for beat, you want me to care about this the same as, like, I would care about, like, Joel with his first kid, you know, with that one soldier out in the woods. And I just feel nothing.
Yeah. I think...
And it's like, it's... There are so many points in the early hours of this where I'm like, it's not just proximity to playing The Last of Us that did it. It feels like it tries to hit the same beats in very similar ways way too frequently in its opening hours.
It does.
And I can't help but feel that way about it.
It does. It is telling a different story on paper. I completely feel that it is going for the same heartstrings. It wants the same punch and doesn't really know how to do it. And that's why... This is the third time I've played this. This is the third time. I played it when it came out. I played it on the Steam Deck a couple of years ago. I'm now playing the remaster. I love this game. I'm probably going to give it a 6 on this review. I love this game the way I would love anything that I just enjoy kicking the shit out of. Like, there's no way I can talk about it without sounding like a cunt. Because even the nice things I'd have to say about it, I can't help but communicate in the snidest way possible. Because this game, there's something about it that while I'm playing it, and I'm not having a bad time, I'm not having a great time, but I'm not feeling like this is one of the things I'm gonna regret on my deathbed. When I think of all the time I've wasted, there are things I've done that I'll regret first before... There's no way I can say anything nice properly about it. I have so much contempt for this game that is actually so inoffensive, and its lack of offense is partly why I hate it so much, and also why I love it so much. 5 years on, and the Radio Free Oregon broadcasts still make me legitimately laugh for how pathetic they are. With this completely spineless representation of a truther character who is not actually saying anything that truthers say, like to their degree of extremity. It's just like dancing around on the edges of all. He might say something controversial. He might say something oh no, he just says that commercialism is a bit rubbish. And then the protagonist, Deacon, especially if you're on the bike, because they did that thing like in Spider-Man where he yells stuff if he's on the bike. So always go on the bike if one of those broadcasts starts, because then... After Copeland, the guy who does the Radio Free Oregon, says his thing about, you know, oh, they sold us products that would break, so we buy more of them, but that's not going to help us in the apocalypse, which would be an interesting thing to bring up in a game like this if it went anywhere. But it just does that, and then the protagonist is like, yeah, there's nothing wrong with some crass commercialism! Like, constantly having to come up with a counterpoint, even if the counterpoint makes no sense, just to have the equivocation in there, because heaven for fucking bid, the gamers think we're making a point. I love how awful this game is when it comes to that shit. Every time the Radio Free Oregon broadcast starts, I go quiet and I sit on the edge of my seat grinning, because it's gonna be so fucking stupid.
It is a game that is so committed to not having any kind of stance on anything.
Yep. Which is hilarious when you consider the director. It's
constantly just there.
Total gammon of a director. We've talked about him before. Said
how dare you put my motorcycle man in Astrobot? How dare you?
The game's referenced in Astrobot, which, mate, you've got no stake in it anymore. You don't even work there. And that's a good thing, because you're a fucking melt. He he claimed that the game's review scores when it first came out, which, from what I remember, were not actually all that bad. It just got your sort of 7s creeping up on your 8s. It was fine. But he was like, game reviewers, they're woke. That's why that happened. They're woke. And, mate, your game has to gum. It's got no teeth. It has to have applesauce, and that has to be soaked. That's how few teeth your game has, mate. And you want to claim that the woke mind virus can't handle the truth bombs you were dropping? With your shit, with your commercialism is bad, yeah, but no, maybe it is...
Again, I hate to compare it to The Last of Us. If we're looking for interesting characters that are like doomsday prepper truthers, the TV show adaptation of The Last of Us had an entire episode of a wonderful queer relationship with a paranoid, leaning toward right-wing, end-of-the-world prepper. Fascinating look at a character like that. Days Gone could only dream of such a thing.
That's it. Like, Days Gone could only dream of a politically offensive controversy. Like, it aspires to be controversial, because it isn't. The director might be a fucking wingnut moron, but he did not have the spine to express it in that game. I don't know if he thinks he did, but sir, my friend, you did not. That game says nothing and means even less. It is... like I called it earlier, it is digital antacid. It has no sting whatsoever. It is like the police today.
Either of you played anything else this week?
No.
I played something.
Yeah?
Yeah. I didn't put it down in our pre-show notes. Conrad reminded me when he mentioned being older. Yeah, I'm in a funny place with some games where I actually feel I'm better at a lot of them than I was 20 years ago.
Sure.
Simply because I've now been playing games for so long, for a living, that there are some things that are just now, like, have become second nature. So, I re-download Bayonetta, let's say, which is what I did. I re-downloaded Bayonetta. I've been playing some Bayonetta. And I feel better at that game than I was when it was brand new, when I was in my 20s.
Don't say things
For
like that.
about 3 minutes till the carpal tunnel comes in.
Wait, can we come back to the second? That can't be right. You could not have been in your 20s when the first Bayonetta came out. It can't have been that long.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, God.
Bayonetta came out in 2009.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah.
Don't like that.
I remember because I was still living in the first place I lived in Mississippi when it came out.
I was living with my parents. Oh.
It's the only way I can remember things. My memory issues are like so bad that many years clump. So I can only go by where I was. And that's how I know, that must have come out when I was in my 20s. Because I was here at this point until like my mid-20s. Then I was here, and then I was here in my 30s, you know. But yeah, I feel a bit better at that game these days than back then. But only for about 3 minutes. Because now my hands cramp really bad. And it's actually gotten me thinking about... Because, you know, I was talking about accessibility a little bit with Clair Obscur in the Jimquisition. And Laura, you and I, we've been talking about, like, after Atomfall especially, we've been talking about, like, the migraine stuff that I have going on. And as I tried to pull my arthritic fingers back into position, I was like, yeah, every game needs remappable controllers. Like, all... Because it doesn't have it. And because I still play Dynasty Warriors okay. But Bayonetta has the 2 melee attacks, like your punchy and your kicky. They're on I can't remember the Switch layout. If we go by the DualShock layout, circle and triangle, and shooting is square. And I think there's a very good reason why melee attacks usually start at square and triangle. There is just that small loss of stretch with using, like, having to hammer the circle and the triangle so much that keeps my hands cramped more than it would be if I was just leaning the thumb over a little more towards the square. And it is making the game really painful to play, which is a shame, because it's still so fucking gloriously dumb. It is still really fun. It's one of the most deliciously stupid games.
If it potentially helps, you can remap the Switch's controls on the system level.
Ooh, I hadn't thought of that.
On the home screen, there is a controller icon, and if you go there, you can set up a second controller layout profile so that, like, you can swap it back to normal pretty easily afterwards, where you can just swap around those button positions and then load that up before you play Bayonetta specifically. That might help.
Nintendo what say don't. Essentially.
Yeah.
In that regard. Awesome. I will try that, because I am fairly convinced that I am still going to get a cramped fucking hand. And no, it's not because of that.
Well, no, it's and that is something that we have to be, like, more conscious of now at our age. Like, I just scheduled an appointment to talk to an orthopedics physician about my wrists, because in the last few weeks I've really noticed just severe weakness in my thumbs, and that is a bad fucking sign.
Not a good sign, no.
Yeah.
Not at all.
So, like, it's and it's shit like Bayonetta. It's shit like Hades.
Yeah.
That's what's done this to me, and it's it's my fault, but that's what done it. And we just take care of yourselves. Take breaks, people.
Absolutely.
Don't do this professionally.
Don't try this at home. These stunts are performed by untrained losers. Do not attempt to mimic us in any way. Yeah, so I have enjoyed the very short bursts of Bayonetta that I've been able to play. I still love the soundtrack. I started thinking about it because of that big match I've got coming up that I can't announce yet. And I might use... Sometimes for big matches, I will use special music. And I'm probably going to use the Bayonetta... The music that, it's not the first level. It's the first proper level after the prologue when she's on the train.
Yes.
The song's called Let's Dance Boys. And it's so fucking perfect. It is such a juicy song. And I've wanted to have a match where I come out to that. And I think that's going to be the one.
Nice.
Yeah, lovely game. The only other thing I've played is Radiata Stories, rather, which is an old Tri-Ace PS2 RPG.
I remember that.
Yeah, I won't go fully into it now because I've not played a great deal of it yet, but what a bananas game. It's, again, I've just played a lot of games that I've enjoyed because they're so stupid, but in really fun ways. And that game is just weird. Its sense of humor is so weird. Weird facial expressions that appear out of nowhere, and people doing strange animations while they talk to each other that just seem to have no real reason, just to create some strange surrealist piece. I'm looking forward to digging into it more. But yeah, that was me this week.
My only other thing I want to talk about quickly, and it's not a thing I played, but it is video game adjacent. I saw that Until Dawn movie.
Oh no.
That came out. The movie adaptation, supposedly, of the PlayStation video game Until Dawn.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about this on the show a while ago when the trailer came out, that it seemed like it was going to be nothing at all in any way to do with the game. And that is accurate. It's called Until Dawn.
Yeah.
At one point, there's a character who wears a mask that's kind of like that one mask that one character in Until Dawn wears, kind of.
Right.
They say the word Wendigo The word Wendigo comes
Oh
up.
shit, that's like in the game. Oh shit.
That's like in the game, isn't it? Oh, shit. Peter Stormare is there, kinda.
I mean, that already gives
Peter Stormare's kinda there.
That guarantees at least 1 of 5 stars from me.
Yeah.
So, I don't hate it, but it's a weird film. 'Cause, like, let me try and explain what this film is, because I think going in knowing what to expect of it helps. This is a time loop horror film in which a bunch of teenagers or young adults are trapped in a time loop where they keep dying and time keeps resetting and they have to survive, quote, until dawn, right, to get away. But it is being orchestrated by someone who is deliberately changing things each loop so that they can't get used to, like, anticipate what's coming, because the point of it is that they have to be scared. Every night they are getting scared, and that is generating fear, and that is, like, turning them. And that's why there's, like, a time limit of how many loops they're going to survive. What this film is fundamentally is a bunch of filmmakers that came together and went, I have a bunch of ideas for really funny death scenes in a horror film that I can't justify a horror film's worth of setup to get to, or once I start doing the thing, I'm not going to be able to sustain this being a whole film's worth of a thing. So I want to do a series of, like, 10-minute long, just the bit of a horror film where, like, everyone's dying in whatever way they're going to die in this horror film. And we're just going to kind of, it's largely going to be a montage of that, with occasional, you found out one new thing that might help you during the loop, maybe. It gets even, by the end of it, it's not even like 10 minutes to a concept. It's, oh, we forgot about some of the loops we went through. Don't worry, I've got my phone. There's recordings. We can watch 40-second at most clips of some of the loops we skipped over. It's just an excuse for how many death compilations can we string together into a narrative. And it's at its best when it's not taking itself too seriously. This film is not good. So I say that. Will you forgive me spoiling one of the death loops in it?
Please.
That had me fucking cackling.
I'm probably not going to watch it for about 15 years.
Yeah. So the one that had me fucking cackling is there's one where they've realised they're in a death loop. All you gotta do is survive until the morning. So they lock themselves in the bathroom of this cabin, and they're like, we're just gonna stay in here until it's morning. And they're all just, like, in the bathroom. They're a bit thirsty, you know, they pour a glass of water, drink it, pass it around. Turns out, in this loop, and there's no way they could have known this, this is the loop where if you drink water, you explode. So because they all drank the water, one of them is just mid-conversation, fucking explodes into chunks all over the bathroom. The next one starts feeling their stomachs start to churn, and they realise it's the water. And it's like 3 or 4 minutes of them all trying to run away from the water that's inside them that make you explode.
That is incredible.
And, like, you know, it starts off just, you explode in one go. That's, like, funny and shocking. Now we know what to expect. No. The water has a sense of comedic pacing. Now it's going to start exploding you just a little bit at a time to really stretch it out. Except when it doesn't, and it goes back to explode you fast again. Shit like that, where it's just, there's no way that there's a horror film's worth of content in that. But they did just want to have the 10 minutes where you drank the water, now you explode. Was all they had.
It's pretty good.
It's kind of just an excuse to stretch a bunch of those back to back together. And if you go in expecting that, rather than Until Dawn, it's kind of fun. I've had far worse times with far more boring horror films. It is an embarrassment to call it Until Dawn. But it's kind of fun if you just want to watch, we threw some darts at a dartboard, yeah, that'll fill 6 minutes of everyone dying again. So, yeah, I didn't hate it. It's not good. That's Until Dawn. I watched that.
It's so.
I think that's it. For...
You know, it's kind of funny because they used to put out, I remember in the 80s, like compilations of just like gory deaths in movies and shit like that. And it sounds like that's what this is, but they decided to, you know, as would occasionally be the case in these films, you know, try to put some bare lattice work of narrative to hold it together.
You know what it is? It's when you watch, like, a porn with a half-hour-long plot before the sex starts. Like, fundamentally, you've come for this, like, compilation of back-to-back the thing that's going to satisfy you, but you have bought in on the conceit that there is going to be, like, half an hour plus of plot setup to justify the thing that we all know kind of you came to see.
Right.
Yeah.
Huh.
It's a weird one. It's an interesting curio.
Well, and it's funny, too, because I respect that so much more in porn. Right? Like, that they went to the effort to try and create some sort of justification as opposed to just starting, you know, when they just, boom, we're fucking.
And, like, you know what? I think this is a more enjoyable way to watch a compilation of deaths back-to-back than a contextless YouTube video.
Sure.
You know, I appreciated that you made a conceit for this back-to-back string of deaths. You know what? I'll give you that. You put some effort into, we've got a bunch of very small ideas that don't really make a film unless we smush them together. But there we go. That's everything for this week, I think.
I just got to quickly say that there is an old sketch show from the early 2000s. Growing up, it was a big influence on me. It was called The League of Gentlemen.
Oh, bless, yes.
Oh, yeah.
There were these two characters. I forget their names, but they hung around in a video, like a VHS rental store, and they're far from any of the famous characters that like became big off the show. But they were these two guys that would just like look through all these VHS cassettes, just going thin, 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 thin. Oh, I've not thinned that. And the other guy would be like, oh, how many killings? And he'd be like,
yes,
that was it. And it's just judging a film based on how many killings there are. There was a sketch they did where they're looking at a case for the movie Seven, and it's how many killings? Well, there's 7. There is some talking, and the other guy's about to just put it back, just pissed off. Just no, but mostly it's just killings. That's what that makes me think of.
This is exactly the film that they wanted to take off the shelf.
I just watched Taskmaster season with Steve Pemberton.
Oh shit!
Yeah,
I got through all of them up to the most recent, but didn't know there was a new one. Steve Pemberton's in it.
I don't know if it was a new one, but it was.
I've not seen it. It must be.
There's also like the brand new season's just about to drop, and they've got Jason Mantzoukas. It's the first time they have like an American, like living in America comedian on, and the press is just like, we didn't know what to do with him. He is boundless energy. We could have just had him without these other 4 people. So I can't wait. I'm very excited.
Must have made the other 4 feel great.
Oh, you know how it is with Taskmaster. The goal is not to make the contestants feel good.
No, not at all. Not at all. Well, all of this tells me that wherever I'm at with the series, I'm behind, and Steve Pemberton's involved.
There's some good stuff coming for you, yeah.
I'm excited about that.
Right. So did we do a show?
We did a show!
Good for us.
Yeah.
This is usually the bit where Steph tells me to tell people I did
stuff.
Right,
yeah, I wasn't sure if we had more cooking or not.
I reckon this is probably it.
Well, I mean, we've always got more cooking. Laura?
Yeah.
Your kitchen is positively heaping with meats and flour-based goods. Gluten for those that can. Please tell us about it.
Just? You can find all the stuff I'm doing at Laura K. Buzz over on YouTube, Blue Sky, Patreon. That's the one that pays the bills. Look out this week on Accessibility for a video about how consultants and reviewers and people developing games are being put at risk of physical injury by working on accessibility.
I've seen a bit of
And
this. It's great,
Yeah.
listeners. It's really good.
It digging into the ways that, like, there are long-term health impacts to expecting people with ongoing vestibular conditions to push through that in the line of creating games, and that it's really important we as an industry work on solutions that don't rely on human cost to get those results. Really happy with that episode. It'll be up on YouTube on Friday. Please go check it out. What about you, Conrad? Where are you out on the internet?
Oh, you can find me at Conrad Zimmerman on Blue Sky, and you can hang out with me on Twitch at twitch.tv/thatconradzimmerman. I'm on Sundays, Mondays, and often Tuesdays. You can buy anti-capitalist propaganda and Jimquisition merchandise at mercenarycreative.com. And everything I do online gets supported through Patreon at patreon.com/fistshark. And you know who else has a Patreon? Stephanie Sterling.
That is correct. Jimquisition.com/that's not correct. Patreon.com/Jimquisition is where you can support this show and the Jimquisition show. And the reviews that are on thejimquisition.com should have a Days Gone remastered review up this week. And hopefully, now that I'm actually getting cooking with it, a Expedition 33 one coming in the near future. We'll have news on my in-ring return soon. Until then, I do have there are some video games that I've worked on coming out on June 17th, Date Everything launches, and on June 24th, Quantum Witch launches. I have written for both of those games, and I am also continuing to work alongside the Vampire Survivors folks. Their last update, The Coop, and an Emerald Saga crossover launched at once a few weeks ago, and I worked on the bestiaries for those. So yeah, check those out if you're so inclined. Otherwise, I'm Commander Sterling on Blue Sky and Instagram. Just Jim Sterling on Twitch TV. And that's that. We will see you next time. Thank you so much for listening and for all your support. See you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.